The morning started like any other Tuesday in Seoul. Ambassador sat in his office at the United Terran Command Building, drinking his third cup of coffee and reading reports about colony shipments to Mars. Nothing prepared him for what happened next. His computer screen went black. Then it turned bright blue. A symbol appeared that he had never seen before, something like a star with too many points, rotating slowly. "Sir, are you seeing this?" His assistant ran into the room, her face pale. "Stood up, call everyone now." Within 30 minutes, every screen on Earth showed the same symbol. Television broadcasts stopped. Internet feeds froze. Even the displays on phones and watches showed nothing but that strange rotating star. Then it spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once. It didn't sound human, but the words were in every language simultaneously. Heard Korean. Others heard English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic. The technology behind this was beyond anything humanity had created. "Greetings, young species of the third planet. You are now known to the Galactic Council. This message confirms your integration into the wider community of intelligent life." Felt his heart race. First contact. After decades of searching the stars, listening with massive telescopes, sending out signals, the aliens had found them first. The message continued. "Your recent experiments with faster-than-light technology have made your presence detectable. The Council has reviewed your development status. You are classified as a Category 7 civilization. The standard protocols now apply." Captain burst into his office. She commanded the largest ship in Earth's defense fleet, the Soul's Pride. Her uniform was still wet from the rain outside. "Are you hearing this?" she asked. Nodded, unable to speak. The alien voice explained the protocols. Humanity would join the Galactic Council as a junior member. This was supposed to be an honor. 47 other species had welcomed Earth into the galactic family. But then came the demands. Annual tribute is required from all Category 7 civilizations. You will provide 60% of your planetary resources. This includes metals, water, biological materials, and energy output. Additionally, 30% of your population will be designated for labor assignments throughout Council space. Your military capabilities must be completely dismantled. Weapons, ships, and defensive systems will be surrendered to Council authority. His face turned red. "They want to take our people as slaves." "The term is labor caste," the voice corrected, somehow hearing her. "All junior species contribute to the greater civilization. This is how the galaxy has functioned for 80,000 years." Found his voice. "And if we refuse?" The pause lasted 3 seconds. It felt like hours. "Refusal has never occurred. However, pacification protocols exist for theoretical scenarios. You have 30 days to prepare your compliance. Representatives will arrive in your system within that. Failure to comply will result in enforcement measures." The screens went blank. Normal broadcasts resumed, but nothing was normal anymore. Within the hour, sat in a conference room with Earth's top leaders. Presidents, prime ministers, generals, scientists, everyone who mattered crowded around the long table or joined via video link. Admiral spoke first. He was the oldest person in the room, with white hair and a scar across his cheek from the resource wars of 2089. "I've reviewed what we know. These aliens have faster-than-light travel. They can hijack every electronic device on our planet simultaneously. They claim to represent 47 different species." "What are our chances if we fight?" asked the president of the North American Union. His expression was grim. "If their claims are accurate, 0. A civilization that controls 47 species and has existed for 80,000 years would have weapons we can't imagine. Our entire space fleet consists of 32 ships. Most are cargo vessels." Disagreed. "We shouldn't assume we're helpless. Yes, they're advanced, but they might be bluffing about their numbers." "Or they might be understating them," countered. Dr. Earth's chief had been quiet until now. She was young for such an important position, barely 35, but she had spent her entire life studying the possibility of alien contact. "I've been analyzing the transmission," she said. "They included a data package, historical records supposedly. I've only reviewed a fraction, but what I've found is disturbing." She displayed a chart on the main screen. It showed 47 different alien species. Each one had a date next to it. "These are the dates each species joined the council," explained. "The oldest was 80,000 years ago. The most recent was 600 years ago. Every single species followed the same pattern: contact, demand, compliance." "Every single one?" asked. "Every one, not a single species refused. They all accepted the terms and became part of this hierarchy." The room fell silent. Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Seoul continued its daily life. People rushed to work. Cars filled the streets. Children went to school. None of them knew that aliens had just claimed ownership of their lives. "What kind of civilization operates like this?" she asked. "They're not inviting us to join them as equals. They're demanding we become their servants." "Historically, every empire has operated this way," said quietly. "The strong dominate the weak. It appears the galaxy follows the same rules." "Then the galaxy is wrong," said. Looked at the data had displayed. 80,000 years, 47 species, not one had said no. He thought about human history, the wars, the revolutions, the people who fought against impossible odds because they refused to surrender their freedom, the American Revolution, the French Resistance, the Korean independence movement, countless others. Humans had never been good at accepting domination. "We need more information," he said. "Analyze everything in that data package. Prepare a realistic assessment of our military options, even if they're limited. Get the fleet ready for anything." "Ready for what?" asked. "We don't even know what we're facing." "That's true, but in 30 days they're coming here. Whether we fight or surrender, we need to be prepared." The meeting continued for 6 more hours. Plans were made, contingencies discussed, but everyone knew the truth. Humanity faced an impossible choice: submit to an alien empire and lose their freedom, or resist and face destruction. As left the building that night, he looked up at the stars. They had always seemed so beautiful, so full of possibility. Now they felt threatening. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council waited for humanity's surrender. They seemed very certain it would come, but remembered something his grandmother had told him when he was young. She had lived through the unification wars, had seen terrible things, had survived when others hadn't. "The powerful always expect the weak to submit," she had said. "They're always surprised when we don't." Smiled grimly. In 30 days, the council would get their answer. He suspected they wouldn't like it. The council ship appeared near Neptune exactly 28 days after the first message. It was massive, larger than any city on Earth, floating in space like a small moon made of silver and crystal. Watched it through the diplomatic shuttle. Next to him sat Earth's most experienced diplomat and commander who led Earth's military response team. Behind them were 6 other specialists, scientists, linguists, and security officers. "It's beautiful," whispered. "It's a threat," replied. They were both right. The shuttle docked with the council ship after a 3-day journey. The airlock opened with a hiss, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls glowed with soft light. Strange symbols floated in the air like holographic butterflies. A figure waited for them. It looked like a serpent standing upright, twice as tall as a human. Its scales were deep purple, and its eyes were golden and ancient. When it spoke, its mouth didn't move. The words came directly into their minds. "I am Hierarch. Welcome to the Eternal Accord." Forced himself to stay calm. This was first contact with an individual alien, not just a voice on a screen. He bowed slightly, a gesture of respect without submission. I am ambassador, representing the people of Earth and all human colonies. Thank you for receiving us. His eyes seemed to analyze them like insects under glass. Your gratitude is noted. Follow me. The council is assembled. They walked through corridors that physics. Sometimes the walls were solid. Sometimes they were transparent, showing the stars outside. Once looked down and saw Earth, impossibly small and far away. The council chamber was circular and enormous. 47 beings sat in elevated positions around the room, recognized none of their species. Some had fur, some had scales, some looked like living crystals, others description. All of them looked at the humans with the same expression, mild interest mixed with certainty. Gestured to a platform in the center of the room. Stand there. The council will hear your acceptance. Acceptance. His hand moved toward his sidearm before he stopped himself. Of the terms presented to your species, explained, his mental voice patient as if speaking to children. This is a formality, of course. All species accept. It is the logical response to overwhelming power. Stepped onto the platform. His heart pounded, but his voice stayed steady. We're here to discuss the terms, not to accept them. A ripple went through the chamber, not sound, something else. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. A being made of what looked like living crystal spoke next. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. Discuss. There is nothing to discuss. The terms are standard. Every species receives identical treatment based on their classification level. Moved forward. She had prepared for this moment, studying every scrap of information about galactic diplomacy. Respectfully, we would like to understand why these terms are necessary. What threat does humanity pose that requires dismantling our defenses? What benefit does the Council gain from taking our people and resources? Tilted his head. Threat. You misunderstand. This is not about threats. This is about order. The galaxy functions on a hierarchy. Older, more advanced species guide younger ones. In exchange for our protection and knowledge, you contribute resources and labor. This system has maintained peace for 80. Peace for whom? Asked. The crystal being made a sound like breaking glass. Laughter. Peace for everyone. Before the Council, the galaxy was chaos. Species fought constantly. Billions died in pointless wars. The hierarchy ended that. Now there is order. Listened carefully. Something bothered him about this explanation. How many wars has the Council fought in the last 1,000 years? Paused. Wars. None. There is no need for war when all species accept their proper place. And how many species have refused your terms? Another pause, longer this time. None. In 80,000 years, not a single species said no. Why would they? Refusal is illogical. Survival requires accepting reality. Stepped forward, his military bearing obvious. What happens to species that can't pay the tribute? What if their resources run out? That has never occurred, said. The tribute percentages are carefully calculated to be sustainable. But what if it did? What if a species couldn't pay? The council chamber grew quiet. Finally, a being that looked like a collection of floating rocks spoke. Its voice rumbled like an earthquake. Such a species would be reclassified. Their contribution would adjust accordingly. Meaning they'd give more labor instead of resources, said quietly. More of their people. The rock being didn't deny it. Looked around the chamber. 47 species. How many of them had started as equals and slowly given more and more until they had nothing left? How many of the beings in this room had once sat on the platform where he stood now? We need time to prepare our world, he said carefully. The transition you're describing would cause significant disruption to our society. Of course, agreed. Standard adjustment period is 10 of your years. During this time, tribute requirements increase gradually. This allows for smooth integration. And our military forces. will be dismantled immediately. This is non-negotiable. Junior species do not require weapons. The Council provides all necessary protection. His jaw clenched, saw the muscles in his neck tighten. Protection from what? Asked. His golden eyes blinked slowly. From each other, from chaos, from yourselves. Back in the shuttle 3 hours later, slammed his fist against the wall. They're slavers. They dress it up with fancy words about hierarchy and order, but they're taking our freedom and calling it protection. Nodded slowly. She looked tired. Did you notice something? They've never been questioned before. Every question we asked confused them. They don't have good answers because nobody has ever demanded good answers. Stared at Earth on the. They were closer now, the blue and white planet growing larger. Was right, he said. This isn't about military superiority. It's about psychology. They expect submission because they've always received it. Their entire system depends on species being too afraid to refuse. Are we going to refuse? Asked. That was the question. Had spent 3 days with the Council. He had seen their ship, their technology, their casual certainty. They had power beyond Earth's ability to match. But he had also seen something else. Had mentioned the last military action was 60,000 years ago. The Council's weapons were ancient, maintained but not improved. Their tactics were theoretical, based on models and simulations against species that didn't fight back. They had become comfortable, complacent. They had forgotten what war looked like when both sides wanted to win. I don't know, admitted. That's for Earth to decide, we just gather information. I gathered information too, said. Their ships are huge but slow. Their shields are powerful but constant. They never turn them off, which means they never test them. And that creature, when I moved toward my weapon, he flinched. Just for a second, but he flinched. What does that mean? Asked. It means he's never been in danger. None of them have. They make threats, but they've never had to follow through because everyone always surrenders. Nodded slowly. When we get back, we report everything. Then Earth's leaders decide. Decide what? Whether humanity will be the first species in 80,000 years to teach the Council what the word no means. The shuttle accelerated toward home. Behind them, the eternal accord floated in the darkness, beautiful and terrible and absolutely certain of humanity's inevitable submission. They had no idea what was coming. The United Earth Assembly met in Geneva. Every nation sent representatives. Every colony transmitted votes from Mars, Luna, and the asteroid settlements. For the first time in human history, every person on Earth and beyond had a voice in what came next. Stood at the podium, his report complete. Behind him, massive screens showed images of the Council ship, the alien beings, the impossible technology. That's everything we learned, he concluded. Now we must decide how to respond. The chamber erupted in voices: fear, anger, desperation, hope. President of the Indian Federation stood. We cannot fight them. The logical choice is survival. We accept their terms and live to see another day. Live as slaves, countered General Torres from the South American Coalition. 30% of our people taken every year. 60% of everything we make given away. That's not survival. That's slow extinction. Doctor took the floor next. She displayed her analysis of the Council's historical data. Charts and graphs filled the screens. I've studied every species that joined the Council, she said. The pattern is clear. First, they pay tribute. Within a few generations, their contribution increases. Not officially, the percentages stay the same, but their populations grow, so they give more people. Their industries expand, so they produce more resources. After 1,000 years, some of these species give 95% of everything they make. What about the species that joined recently? Someone asked. The youngest council member joined 600 years ago. They now contribute 80% of their resources and 40% of their population. The tribute always grows, never shrinks. Silence filled the chamber. Admiral spoke next. His voice was rough, tired. I've analyzed our military options. They're limited but not non-existent. The Council's technology is superior, yes, but it's old technology. They haven't innovated in because they haven't needed to. They haven't fought a real war in 60,000 years. Joined him at the podium. My tactical team has reviewed every detail of the Eternal Accord. It's huge, but it's alone. They sent one ship because they expected immediate surrender. Their entire fleet is spread across the galaxy, maintaining occupation of hundreds of systems. If they attack us, they'll need to pull ships from other locations. That takes time. How much time? Asked President of the African Union. Weeks, maybe months. Their faster-than-light travel is incredible, but the galaxy is vast. They can't move their whole fleet instantly. There's something else. Something I saw in his eyes. Fear. Just a flash, but it was there. These aliens talk about pacification protocols, but I don't think they've ever used them. Not really. Every species surrenders before it comes to that. A young representative from the Mars colony stood. His name was barely 25 years old. His voice shook slightly when he spoke. I have a question, maybe it's stupid, but what if we just don't? Don't what? Asked. Don't accept, don't refuse, just don't. They gave us 30 days to respond. What happens on day 31 if we say nothing? The older representatives looked at each other. It was such a simple question, almost childish. But nobody had an answer. Smiled. They don't have a protocol for that. Everything they do assumes species will engage with their system, accept or refuse, but ignoring them, that's not in their playbook. It only delays the inevitable, warned. Eventually they'll force a response. But it gives us time, said. Her eyes lit up with tactical possibilities. Time to prepare, time to study their technology, time to make them uncertain. The debate continued for 8 more hours. Every option was examined. Surrender, fight, delay, negotiate, flee. Finally, the vote was called. The question was simple: accept the Council's terms. The vote was unanimous. Every nation, every colony, every representative. No. But that created a new question: how to communicate that refusal. We could send a detailed response, suggested. Explain our reasons, our philosophical objections, our... No, interrupted. They'll take any long response as negotiation. They'll think we're asking for better terms. Then what? Asked. One word, said. Just one word, clear and simple, no room for misinterpretation. They debated which word. Refuse was too formal, never implied eventual change. Sounded like they thought themselves equal to the Council. Spoke up again. How about just no, simple, direct? A child would understand it. Looked at the young man. Sometimes wisdom came from unexpected places. No, he repeated. Yes, that's perfect. The recording was made. Sat in front of cameras that would broadcast to the entire galaxy. He wore a simple suit. No military uniform. No symbols of power. He looked like what he was, a human being speaking for his species. The message was 3 seconds long. No. That was all, one word, spoken clearly in Korean, then repeated in English, Mandarin, Spanish, and 50 other languages. Each time the same word. No. The transmission was sent on every frequency. Radio, laser, subspace. The Council would hear it. Every species in the galaxy would hear it. For the first time in 80,000 years, someone had said no to the Galactic Council. On the Eternal Accord received the message. He played it 17 times, certain his translator was malfunctioning. The word was simple, primitive, impossibly defiant. He called an emergency council session. This is clearly a mistake, said the crystal being. Perhaps they don't understand our language properly. They understand, replied. His voice held something new, uncertainty. They chose this word deliberately. Then they're fools, rumbled the rock being. Activate pacification protocols. Access the protocols. They hadn't been updated in 58,000 years. The last actual use was against a species so primitive they fought with stone weapons. The protocols basically said, threaten them until they surrender. What if they don't surrender? Asked aloud. The council chamber went silent. The question itself was revolutionary. Species always surrendered. It was the natural order, the way things worked. Then we enforce compliance, the crystal being said, but its voice wavered. How? Demanded. The protocols don't explain how. They assume surrender. Every strategy, every contingency, every plan, all based on the assumption that a show of force will bring compliance. Then we actually use force, suggested a furred creature from the back. Against whom? Their military, their cities, their leaders. We've never done this. None of us. None of our species remembers how to wage actual war. The truth settled over the chamber like cold water. The Galactic Council, rulers of 47 species, masters of thousands of worlds, had built their empire on a foundation of fear and assumption. They had never actually conquered anyone. They had just convinced everyone that resistance was impossible. Now someone had resisted. On Earth, monitored galactic communications. Her equipment was primitive compared to Council technology, but it worked. She picked up fragments of transmissions between Council ships. They were panicking. They don't know what to do, she reported too. Their communications are chaotic. Ships are requesting orders. Orders aren't coming. Will they attack? Asked. I don't know, but they're not attacking yet. Across the galaxy, something else happened. Something the Council didn't notice at first. On a dozen worlds, beings who had paid tribute for thousands of years heard Earth's transmission. They heard one word spoken with absolute certainty. No. Some laughed, some cried, some sat in silence remembering stories their ancestors told, stories about freedom, about choice, about a time before the Council. Protests began on 3 worlds, small at first, a few hundred people refusing to work, nothing serious. But it was beginning. Earth's single word was spreading through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. And the Council, for the first time in 80, didn't know how to put it out. Stood on the roof of the assembly building, looking at stars that suddenly seemed less threatening and more full of possibility. What happens now? Asked beside him. Now we wait, see if they have the courage to back up their threats. And if they do, then we show them why humans never learn to stay conquered. Somewhere in deep space, Council ships began moving toward Earth, slowly, uncertainly, like predators who'd never actually caught anything before. They were about to learn that prey could bite back. The Council fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system 42 days after Earth's refusal. 27 ships, each one massive and gleaming. They arranged themselves in a formation that looked ceremonial, like they were at a parade instead of a battle. Watched from the Bridge of Souls Pride, humanity's flagship. Around her, the entire Terran defense fleet waited. 32 ships. Most were cargo haulers retrofitted with weapons. A few were purpose-built warships, but they were small and untested. They're just sitting there, reported her tactical officer, a young woman named. They're waiting for us to panic, replied. Standard intimidation tactics. Show overwhelming force and wait for surrender. Is it working? Asked. Smiled grimly. Ask me in an hour. On the Eternal Accord, addressed the Council fleet. Humans of Earth, you have violated galactic law by refusing integration. This fleet represents the Council's authority. Stand down your military forces and prepare for pacification. The response came from Earth's voice. We received your message. Our answer remains unchanged. No. Frustration mounted. This wasn't how it was supposed to work. The sight of the fleet should have broken their will. Every other species had surrendered at this point. "You cannot win," transmitted. "Our technology is superior. Our numbers are greater. Resistance will only bring suffering." "Then leave," replied simply. "We didn't invite you here. We don't want your protection. We don't accept your authority. Go home." Go home. The concept was alien to. The council didn't go home. Species submitted. That was the order of things. "Very well," said. "You force our hand. Prepare for enforcement action." He cut the transmission and faced his military commander, a being called who looked like an armored insect. "Deploy the pacification protocol." His mandibles clicked nervously. "Hierarch, the protocols are theoretical. They've never been field-tested against a unified military force." "Then consider this a test. Disable their weapons, target their ships, avoid casualties if possible, but make them understand resistance is futile." Hesitated, then obeyed. The council ships advanced. Their weapons powered up, energy readings spiking across the spectrum. They moved slowly, majestically, absolutely certain of their superiority. They crossed into the asteroid belt. That's when Menu's modifications activated. He had spent the last 6 weeks reverse engineering council technology from the original transmission. The team couldn't match the aliens' power output or efficiency, but they understood the principles. More importantly, they understood the weaknesses. Council shields operated on a constant frequency, the same frequency for 80,000 years. Why change what worked? The asteroid's menu had modified contained simple magnetic pulse generators, primitive technology, the kind of thing humans had used for decades. They all activated simultaneously. The council shields flickered, just for a second, maybe less. It was enough. Rounds accelerated to a fraction of light speed punched through the gaps. They didn't carry explosives. They didn't need to. At those velocities, simple metal did incredible damage. 3 council ships lost their main power cores. 2 more had their weapon systems destroyed. None were completely destroyed, but all were crippled. The remaining ships stopped advancing. Confusion flooded their communications. "Impossible," whispered. "They're primitive, they can't." "They just did," reported. 5 ships damaged. No casualties among their crew, but the vessels are combat ineffective. "How did they penetrate our shields?" "Unknown, analyzing now." On Soul's Pride allowed herself a small smile. Phase 1 complete, status of the fleet. All ships intact, no damage taken. The Council fleet is holding position. "Good, send them our message." The transmission was simple. "You attacked, we defended, this can stop now, leave our system." Received the message with something close to shock. They had fought back, actually fought back, and won the first engagement. He faced an impossible decision. Retreat would show weakness. Every species in the galaxy was watching, but advancing might mean actual combat, real warfare, something the Council hadn't faced in 60. He chose advance. All ships target their flagship, concentrated fire, maximum power. The Council ships opened fire. Energy weapons, brilliant and terrible, lanced across space toward Soul's Pride. Had anticipated this. Evasive maneuvers, pattern Delta. Soul's Pride moved. The Council weapons, designed for precise targeting of stationary or slow-moving targets, struggled to track. The human ship was smaller, faster, and unpredictable. More than that, had learned something from studying the Council. They fought by formula, textbook tactics that hadn't changed in thousands of years. They couldn't adapt to chaos. Humans had learned to love chaos. Soul's Pride wove through the weapon's fire, taking glancing hits at its hull but didn't breach it. Meanwhile, the rest of the human fleet scattered, not in panic, according to plan. The Council ships tried to track multiple targets simultaneously. Their ancient tactical computers, designed for fighting primitives who stood still and waited to die, couldn't process it. fleet-launched missiles, not advanced ones, simple chemical rockets with conventional warheads. The Council's point defense systems destroyed 90% of them. The other 10% had never been meant to explode. They were decoys, broadcasting false signals, creating confusion, making the Council's sensors show threats everywhere. In the chaos, human ships closed range. At point-blank distance, they fired weapons the Council had never seen: nuclear-pumped lasers, kinetic penetrators, even old-fashioned chemical cannons that fired depleted uranium shells. Primitive weapons, but used creatively, desperately, unpredictably. 2 more Council ships went dark. Another lost its engines and began drifting. "Retreat," ordered. "All ships fall back to Rally Point Neptune." The Council fleet, not in panic but in confusion. They had come to pacify primitives. Instead, they had lost 8 ships to an enemy that shouldn't have been able to fight back. On Earth, monitored the battle's aftermath. More importantly, she monitored the galaxy's reaction. "You need to see this," she called. Her screens showed transmissions from across known space, hundreds of signals, thousands. They were messages of support. "From species we've never heard of," explained. "Some are from Council members, others are from subjugated worlds. They're all saying the same thing." "What?" "They're cheering for us." On 36 worlds, the protests that had started small were growing. Once, 10,000 citizens gathered in the capital, demanding the Council withdraw from Earth. On another world, a junior species refused to send their annual tribute, just this once, just to see what happened. The Council's authority, built on 80,000 years of unquestioned obedience, was cracking. Composed a message to broadcast across the galaxy, not just to the Council, but to every species listening. "People of the galaxy, today humanity fought for our freedom, not because we wanted war, not because we enjoy violence, but because some things are worth fighting for: freedom, dignity, the right to determine our own future." The Council says their system brings order, but order built on fear isn't order. It's just waiting to collapse. They say hierarchy creates peace, but peace without freedom is just a slow death. "We don't ask others to fight our battle. We ask them to fight their own. Each species, each world, stand up, say no, demand to be treated as equals, not servants." The Council is strong, but they forgot something important. Every empire, no matter how powerful, depends on the people accepting their authority. The moment we stop accepting, their power disappears. "We are humanity. We said no. What will you say?" The message spread through the galaxy faster than the Council could suppress it. On ship, the hierarch sat alone, staring at casualty reports. 8 ships damaged, 0 human ships destroyed. The entire engagement had lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes to shatter 80,000 years of certainty. His communicator chimed. Reports from across the Council's territory, protests, refusals, questions. The humans hadn't just fought back. They had done something far more dangerous. They had made others believe fighting back was possible. Entered's chamber, orders hierarch. Had no orders, the protocols didn't cover this, nothing covered this. "I don't know," he admitted. "For the first time in my life, I genuinely don't know what to do." In the asteroid belt, Minu and his engineers celebrated. They had won a battle, not the war. The Council still had thousands of ships they could bring to bear. But they had proven something vital. Humanity could fight, could win, could make the Council bleed. Stood on her damaged ship's bridge, looking at Earth in the distance. "What happens now?" asked. "Now we prepare. They'll come back with more ships, better tactics. They'll learn from this fight." "Can we win?" Thought about that. The honest answer was probably no. The Council had too many ships, too many resources. But winning wasn't the only option. "We don't need to win every battle," said. "We just need to win enough of them. make it cost them more than it's worth, make other species see that resistance is possible. And then we see if the galaxy is ready to be free. Across space, on dozens of worlds, beings who had lived their entire lives under council rule looked at the stars and wondered. If humans could say no, why couldn't they? The question once asked couldn't be unasked. And the council, built on the answer never being questioned, began to fall apart. 1 year later stood in what used to be called the Council Assembly Hall. Now it had a different name, the Free Worlds Forum. The chamber held representatives from 23 species, not as many as the old Council's 47, but these beings were here by choice. No tribute, no hierarchy, just cooperation between equals. Still served as Earth's ambassador, though his role had changed. He wasn't a junior member asking for scraps. He was a founding member of something new. "The motion passes," announced Speaker, a being from one of the first species to withdraw from the Council after Earth's battle. "The Free Worlds Coalition officially recognizes the independence of the colonies." Applause filled the chamber, not the formal acknowledgement of the old Council, but genuine celebration. Outside the hall, walked through the orbital station that housed the Coalition's Joint Defense Fleet. Human ships floated alongside vessels from a dozen other species. She stopped at a viewport to admire Sol's Pride, freshly repaired and upgraded with technology shared by their new allies. "Commander," called a voice behind her. She turned to see the being who had commanded the Council's fleet during that first battle. He had defected 3 months ago, bringing intelligence and tactical knowledge that proved invaluable. "It's just Captain now," corrected with a smile. "We don't use Commander anymore, too hierarchical." Mandibles clicked in what she had learned was amusement. "Old habits. I wanted to thank you again for accepting me into the Coalition Defense Force." "You earned it. That intel about Council fleet movements saved lives." "I brought information about the people I served for 300 years. There is no honor in that." "There's honor in choosing freedom over comfort," replied. "That's harder than most people think." On Earth, Doctor taught at the new institute. Her classroom was filled with students, human and alien both. They studied the mistakes of the past to avoid repeating them. "The Council's biggest error," she explained, "wasn't military or technological. It was psychological. They built a system where questioning wasn't allowed. For 80,000 years, they stopped innovating because they didn't need to. They stopped thinking because thinking was dangerous to their order." A student raised a tentacle-like appendage. Had learned this species found hands disturbing, but they adapted. "Professor, do you think the Council will eventually fall completely?" Considered the question carefully. "The old Council, it already has. 24 species have withdrawn. Another dozen have reduced their tribute to symbolic amounts. What remains is a shadow of what existed." "But they still have power," another student pointed out. "Yes, and they'll likely keep that power for centuries. Empires don't fall overnight. But the idea that they're unbeatable, that fell a year ago when humanity said one word." At the Coalition's military academy, Admiral trained the next generation of officers. His students came from 15 different species, learning tactics that combined human creativity with alien technology. "The Council taught warfare as a formula," he lectured. "Step 1, display overwhelming force. Step 2, wait for surrender. But real warfare isn't formula, it's chaos, adaptation, innovation." Now serving as chief instructor, demonstrated with holographic simulations. "In our first engagement, we didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we were unexpected. The Council couldn't adapt to enemies who didn't follow their script." A young pilot from one of the newer Coalition species asked, "How do we fight enemies stronger than us?" "You don't fight their strength," explained. "You fight their weaknesses, find what they don't expect, do what they think is impossible, make them question their assumptions." nodded approval. The council assumed primitives couldn't hurt them. That assumption cost them 8 ships. Never underestimate an opponent willing to do what you consider unthinkable. In a quiet office on the station, met with representatives from species still under council control. These meetings were secret, dangerous, but necessary. Your worlds want freedom, said. The coalition supports that, but we won't fight your battles for you. We understand, said a delegate who resembled a large furry mammal. We only ask for support, technology, training, recognition when we declare independence. You'll have it, but know this, the council will resist. They'll call you rebels, traitors. They'll threaten and maybe attack. Let them. We've paid tribute for 4,000 years. We've given our children to their labor castes. We've sacrificed our freedom for their protection. The delegate's eyes hardened. Humanity taught us that protection without freedom is just a cage. Smiled. When you're ready, the coalition will stand with you. On what remained of the council's territory faced reality. The eternal accord floated above his, but it felt empty. Half the council's seats were vacant. The species that remained were divided, uncertain, questioning. We could retake Earth, suggested the crystal being, though its voice lacked conviction. Commit more ships, show strength. To what end? Asked. We lost 8 ships in the first engagement. Intelligence suggests they've tripled their defensive capabilities since then. How many ships would we lose? How many crew members? As many as necessary to maintain order. Order is already broken, said quietly. 24 species have withdrawn. More will follow. The question isn't whether we can force Earth to submit. The question is whether forcing them would hold together what remains of the council or shatter it completely. The rock being spoke, its voice like grinding stone. Then we negotiate. Offer Earth a place in the council as equals. No tribute. They'll refuse, predicted. They've built something new. The Free Worlds Coalition treats all species as equals from the start. Why would they trade that for a reformed council? Then what do we do? Had asked himself that question every day for a year. The answer was painful but unavoidable. We adapt or we die. Those are the only options. Back on Earth received a surprise communication. Private, encrypted from himself. Ambassador, I request a meeting. No threats, no demands, just conversation between 2 beings who want to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Considered refusing, but curiosity won. He agreed to meet on neutral ground, a small station at the edge of coalition space. They met in a simple room. No guards, no weapons, just 2 representatives of civilizations on opposite sides of history's turning point. Thank you for coming, said. I almost didn't, admitted. What do you want? To understand. Your species has changed the galaxy in 1 year. I've ruled for 300 years and changed nothing. I want to know how. Sat down. We didn't change the galaxy. We changed ourselves. We refused to accept your rules. Other species saw that and realized they could do the same. But why? Why fight when surrender would have been easier, safer? Because safety without freedom is just waiting to die. My grandmother taught me that. She lived through wars, saw terrible things, but she never accepted domination, even when resistance seemed impossible. His eyes studied. Your species has a saying, those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. We thought we had learned from history. We ended war, created order, built peace that lasted 80,000 years. You created silence. That's not the same as peace. I'm beginning to understand that. They talked for 3 hours, not as enemies, not as negotiators, just as 2 beings trying to understand each other. What happens now? Finally asked. The council is failing, the coalition is growing. Will there be war? That depends on you, said. The coalition doesn't want conquest. We want freedom for ourselves and anyone else who wants it. If the council can accept that, if you can let species choose their own path, then no. There doesn't have to be war. And if we can't, then eventually, yes, but not because we'll attack you. Because the species you're trying to hold will break free, one by one, until you have nothing left to rule. Was quiet for a long moment. I was taught that strength came from hierarchy. The strong guide the weak. Order comes from submission. Strength comes from people choosing to stand together, replied. Real strength, not forced obedience. Can we join you, the remaining council species, not as members, perhaps as observers learning? Smiled. The coalition is open to anyone willing to respect the sovereignty of others, even former council members, especially former council members. You have a lot to teach about what doesn't work. They shook hands, taught the gesture. It felt strange but appropriate. Months later, the transformation continued. The coalition grew to 37 members. The council shrank to 13. Species that had paid tribute for discovered what it meant to keep what they produced. Not everything was perfect. There were disputes, conflicts, growing pains. But there was also something the galaxy hadn't seen in 80,000 years: genuine change, innovation, growth. In a classroom on Earth, a young student asked her teacher, was it worth it, the risk humanity took? The teacher, who had been a child during first contact, smiled. Ask someone from one of the freed worlds. Ask them if freedom is worth risk. Once a memorial was built, not to the old council but to the 8 ships lost in the first battle with Earth. The inscription read, "They died defending an order that deserved to fall. May we learn from their sacrifice." Stood on that same rooftop in Geneva where he'd looked at threatening stars a year ago. Joined him. Feels different now, she said, looking up. Because it is different. The stars used to represent an empire waiting to crush us. Now they represent possibilities. Do you think it'll last, the coalition? Nothing lasts forever, but we built something worth protecting. People chose to stand together rather than bow separately. That idea is stronger than any fleet. Smiled. We got lucky, you know. If the council had committed everything at once. But they didn't, because they'd never had to. We didn't win because we were stronger. We won because we were willing to try when everyone else had given up. Far across the galaxy, on a world that had just declared independence, a child asked her parent, what was the first word the humans said to the council? The parent, who had lived a lifetime under council rule, smiled and answered, no. Just that, just no. Sometimes the simplest words change everything. The child looked up at stars that suddenly seemed less distant, less cold, less dominated by ancient powers who claimed the right to rule. No, the child repeated, testing how the word felt. Strong, simple, powerful. A single word that had broken an empire and freed a galaxy. And somewhere, on Earth in Seoul, received reports of 3 more species requesting to join the coalition. He approved all 3. The galaxy was learning what one word could do. And humanity, the species that had dared to say it, watched with pride as others found their own voices. The council had demanded tribute. Humanity had replied with one word. And the galaxy would never be the same.